What is going on, guys? T to the M to the IDV, and I'm back with another video. The other day I uploaded a video featuring the Sony a6000, and someone reached out to me and let me know that I gave them some good information in terms of triggering their flashes without an actual trigger. So what I wanted to do in this video is I wanted to go over that, because us as photographers, we do things almost as secondhand nature because we're so used to it. So I'm going to go over a few different ways you can trigger your flashes without having an actual trigger. And so in order to do this, you have to put your strobe in slave mode. Now, slave mode actually has a couple of great benefits. One being you don't have to have an actual trigger for the light. Another great benefit of slave mode is if you have a different assortment of lights. Let's say you have some Godox strobes, and let's say you have some Westcott strobes, and so you can make those play together via slave mode. Some people use their good strobe as their main light and then put their more affordable strobes as backlights, things like that, or field lights, and put those in slave mode. And so once you initiate the connection with your key light, that pop of flash will actually initiate in the line of sight of the more affordable strobes that are in slave mode, and there you have communication amongst all of the lights. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you first igniting it with a trigger, so that everyone knows, okay, this is a trigger, this is how it's done. And then I'm going to go on to the second way you can ignite it, which is if you have a speed light as such. And the third way I'm going to do it is with an actual pop-up flash that is on a particular camera. So if you have a camera that has a pop-up flash, then I'm going to show you how to do it that way as well. So the light that we are going to do this on is the Godox AD200. So the first thing I want to do is I want to turn it on, and it has the regular mode for the trigger. And so the trigger has to be on the same channel and the same communication group. So in this case, I have it on channel 21, which I rarely change, and I think it has about 32 channels, and I have it on group A. So now that that is set, I'm going to turn on this camera and turn on this trigger and turn on group A, and I'm going to change it to channel 21. And so now, once that is done, we should see a flash. There we go. Now, triggers are good because they can almost guarantee that this flash is going to pop. That's the reason why you would want to have a trigger. You don't have to worry about line of sight or miscommunication at a higher rate. Now, it's not saying that sometimes it won't trigger, because that is the case. Sometimes it will not fire, but you have a greater chance than using slave mode. Okay, so we have that first test run with the actual trigger. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the trigger off, and I'm going to take my speed light, Godox V1, and I'm going to pop that on, secure it, and I'm going to turn this bad boy on. Now, if you are just using this speed light to in slave mode to trigger another light, you want to be cognizant of this added lighting that's going to come into your photo. So with this, it's nice because it's flexible. I can spin this head, and which actually allows me, if the subject is in front of me and I'm shooting this way, I can actually point my light this way. That way, majority of the light is out of the frame and not really affecting the model as much. Of course, we know light bounces around, but it was significantly different from me pointing the light this way than if I used it to trigger and I had the light pointing that way. Because now I got the light from this strobe and I have the light from this flash actually going onto the model. So that's the nice thing about this. So I will actually point that this way. And so now I'm going to go into my settings, and for this I'm just going to put it in manual mode. So go to manual mode, and I got it at 1/256 of a second. And so now this is the thing. So now I have to go on the Godox 8200 and I have to change the setting from being triggered to actually going into slave mode. And I'm going to hold this red button right here, and it's going to take me to function. I'm going to scroll over to F2 and you'll see S1 and S2. So I'm going to click S1, and then we should be good to go. So I'm going to actually point this way since I got this light flashing that way. So let's see. And there we have it. Boom. And every time. So this is good because you have to keep in mind that this is being triggered from the light of this speed light. So the line of sight has to be clear or else it will not fire. An example of that is if you wanted to illuminate a scene and you had maybe one flash on your model inside of a car, and maybe you wanted to get some extra lights inside the car, and you had your model sitting on the hood of the car. So I could illuminate the model with this and also use it to trigger this. However, if it's not in the line of sight, it's not going to pop. So there's a great chance that if I wanted some added effects and had this sitting inside the car while I was shooting outside of the car, it's a great possibility that it's not going to flash, because this flash is not going to meet this sensor in order to go off. So that's why triggers will most likely be used in scenarios like that. So all that goes to say that firing or triggering your flash strobe with light has its limitations. So we have that set up with a speed light. I'm going to take that off. Actually, I can set that to the side. And so I have my strobe. Now, this is a Nikon camera here. This is a Sony. So I don't have a Sony trigger. So that is why I resorted to triggering my lights with a flash. And so since this is already in slave mode, I can go to my good old Sony a6000, and a lot of cameras have the pop-up flashes, more so beginner cameras, but you can still find the pop-up flashes. So I go to my pop-up flash, and one thing that you may want to look out is some of these pop-up flashes are not flexible. This one happens to be flexible, so I'll tag the video that I actually used it to trigger this, and you can see the photos that I got. But the reason why it was nice to have is because this light is flexible. So you want to look at flash exposure compensation, because if your pop-up flash is not flexible, then you're going to be facing a situation where your light is going to be directly on your subject, and all you want this light to do is trigger this flash. You don't want it to affect the picture. So if you go into your settings and check a flash exposure compensation, then you can reduce the effect that this light will have. In my case, I didn't have to do so because this is flexible. So if the model was in front of me, all I had to do was pull it back, and now the light is pointing this way. With other cameras, you can't do all that. It's just, if it's pointing that way, it's pointing that way. So check into your flash exposure compensation. Okay, so now I have my Sony, and I'm gonna point it this way. And so this is in slave mode, no trigger, and I'm just using a pop-up flash, and we should be able to see. Let me actually point it this way so you can distinguish both of the different lights. There we have it. And that's the beautiful thing. And just to drive the point home, I actually have another camera right here that I can show. And this is actually a Canon, but this won't do the job. So let's see if this other camera. See if it has some juice. Oh, this one doesn't have any juice either. Yeah, can't drive the point home. Okay, but what I wanted to show was that, oh, there we go. Okay, so what I wanted to show is that you see how this is flexible, and so the light that's affecting the model is going to be minimal because I can push this back and make most of the light go this way while still triggering the strobe that I want to trigger. On some other cameras, you don't have that flexibility. Like this pop-up flash, that's all it's going to do. It's going to pop up. I can't move it to go back this way. All the light is going to still go forward. So in that case, the flash exposure compensation will reduce the light that's coming from your flash so that it doesn't affect whatever you're shooting, but it does emit enough light to trigger your strobe. So those are the different ways that you can trigger your strobe, flash, speed light without having a trigger. So that is the great thing about slave mode. Look into it, try it. If you got any questions, tips, other tips, leave them in the comments below. And make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you haven't already done so. And again, I appreciate you all watching my content day in and day out. T to the M to the IDD. Peace.